well-known enterprise companies that are really just trying to figure out the technical aspects of, this industry, because they're all interested, but no one wants to lose their job.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Supermoon House. We're having conversation today from East Denver, and I have very, very special guests and friends over here. We want to discuss decentralized storage. There's a lot of interesting updates that are happening this week in Denver, and we want to discuss the future of decentralized storage. And I want to start maybe with a short round of introductions, starting with Clara's and Stefan and Mike. So Clara, why don't you kick in and share more about you and Filecoin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founding officer of the Filecoin Foundation, and we really support the growing community and ecosystem of builders and storage providers, as well as token holders within Filecoin. So we really want to make sure that we can see decentralized storage, the vision that a lot of people can adopt. And to today's topic, we are also one of the co-founders of the Decentralized Storage Alliance with a bunch of other companies. So this is something that we really care about, is making sure that today most major enterprises are thinking about decentralized cloud.
I'm Stefan. I'm the head of network growth for Filecoin at Buildhouse Labs. I'm president for the Decentralized Storage Alliance, as Clara mentioned. Very fascinating to see this week, definitely with a lot of growth in decentralized AI. So we're seeing that storage is becoming a more important factor in even enabling these decentralized compute workloads that are driven by AI. So it's been very fascinating to see the adoption and all the discussions we had this week. So we can talk about that in detail if you would like to.
And I'm Mike Robinson. I'm the chairman of OORT Foundation. OORT is a decentralized cloud focused on privacy and cost savings. We are really hyper-focused now on AI and DePIN as well, the centralized physical infrastructure network. And just delighted to be here and connect with Filecoin and Supermoon.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. And I want to start with a very important question. We keep discussing decentralized storage. It's been years since we moved into this space, started moving towards decentralization. But there's obviously a lot of friction with adoption. So I want to ask you both, so maybe we can start with Clara, on how do you see this industry evolving? How is adoption changing in the decentralized storage from both enterprise and startups perspective?
Yeah, yesterday I was talking to a company called the Kosh Network, and they were saying that years ago what really made their network take off was actually ChatGPT, because they had so much demand for compute. And I think we really need that also in the enterprise space when it comes to decentralized cloud, is a moment which we're already starting to see of major enterprises coming in, and that being its own flywheel to drive even more adoption. I'm really excited to see so many types of companies really thinking about enterprise. I think right now, as we've gone through, a bit of a crypto winter the last few years, it's great to see the serious builders come forth and those that really want to solve hard problems. A big complaint about crypto is a lot of people don't feel like crypto has real use cases. A lot of companies haven't, and some really do. For us in the Filecoin ecosystem, we have been working on this problem since 2014. And so this is something that a lot of serious companies are coming out of the woodwork right now and really thinking about enterprise adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stefan, you also mentioning about enterprise adoption. You touched before we started podcast on GPUs.
Yeah.
So I wanted also to learn more, like, what is the situation and how, is there any friction in adoption that comes from a computing power that maybe accelerate adoption of decentralized storage?
Yeah. So what we're seeing this weekend, and just in general, there's 10 times more demand for GPUs today than there is supply. And so there's this new wave of model developers, so AI model developers that are looking for more cost-efficient ways to run their models. And so because it's so expensive and there's a shortage and there's a delay or like a long lead times in getting these GPUs. There's more adoption of decentralized compute stacks now. And so we're seeing this increase. Now, on the storage side, there's 10 times more supply. So the discussions this week were all about how can we intersect storage and compute at the right integration points. And what we're seeing is that there's different integration points happening that are possible. There's new data platforms and model platforms like Stability AI, for example, where these models can be trained and iterated on. And then there's new architectures that actually allow validators to create synthetic data sets now to help augment these models, which is another opportunity for a decentralized storage stack to kind of support these new workloads and store these synthetic backups. And then there is another opportunity as well where when you're running your models, as you're iterating through these models, you kind of go through a series of steps, and these snapshots as you go through these models are also of value, and so these could be stored as well. So it's very interesting to see that the shortage in the Web 2 world of the GPUs is sort of driving the adoption now of decentralized compute stacks. And what I'm expecting to see is that in a few quarters, or maybe even faster, we'll see a spike, and we're actually already seeing it. There's a ton more interest now in decentralized storage because of it. And we're going to only see this increase even further as budgets move from compute to storage over time.
And what are you seeing also from adoption perspective? Is it more consumer driven or is it more enterprise driven? What would be like the main points that will bring a bigger adoption to decentralized storage? And
Well, I think it's going to be more on the consumer side, consumer driven. What we are going to be focused on, like I mentioned earlier, the AI point. I think blockchain is going to be very helpful there. Time stamping, having your, fingerprint, basically the hash of data, being able to identify where, a deep fake comes from, right, on the deep pin, right? So meaning like your smartphone, your tablet, your PC. I think that's going to get the consumers more involved. We're thinking about doing quests, right? And then rewarding these consumers for actually participating in like uploading, identifying just deep fakes as a first go at it. But on the enterprise side, we're getting a lot of interest. I mean, our advisors are pretty strong. One of them is the co-founder of Salesforce, Dave Molinoff, right? So having conversations with him, Mitch Kennedy of Dell, and several other that being said, I do think the consumer focus is going to be best for us. That's the position we're going to take. And as that scales out, then I think the enterprise interest is going to come naturally.
Mm-hmm. And you guys were already starting conversations with the enterprise. Clara, you were mentioning that's your field as well. How is it going with their enterprise adoption? Like, is it like a hard conversations? Do you need to do a lot of education, explaining why it's needed, or is it becoming easier and easier, like every day, since like we're discussing the GPU situation and other aspects with the storage?
I think it's becoming easier and easier. I think a lot of people are not thinking of decentralized storage as blockchain, but another alternative to storage out there. And I think this is a very important point because in general, a lot of even traditional cloud companies, they want backup copies. And we just spoke about AI, but AI is actually creating more data than ever. If you think about a self-driving car and the terabytes of data just one self-driving car produces, companies today want to store that somewhere. They don't want to pay a ton of money for archival storage of the data. And that's where, we come in with Filecoin or other solutions, giving them the opportunity to really think about backing up copies, but also having the resiliency of making sure that data doesn't go away. A lot of people today also want to make sure, like what was said earlier around integrity, right? Making sure that we can pull from, if you have a self-driving car that is pulling data from a particular data set and something goes wrong, they want to be able to find that and also kind of figure out how it was iterated or built on over time. And so I think there's a lot in the blockchain security space that has allowed for different kinds of innovation and different kinds of compute to happen that is so different from traditional cloud.
Yeah. And what we're seeing too is like, I think it's the same kind of the strategy, or not strategy, but the same people that are adopting decentralized storage today are the same people that adopted cloud like 15 years ago. And those are researchers that they really value their data sets. They understand that that's, you know, or their oil basically. And for them, immutability, the importance is like they can demonstrate that the data integrity has been maintained. And so you do that by unlocking some of the primitives from decentralized storage through some of the software stacks that they're using to managing their data sets. And so what we're seeing is there's a lot more on-ramps or software stacks that are building on top of decentralized storage that are translating those values back to what users are looking for, and that is immutability, verifiability, you know, having the guarantee to what you were saying, right? That this data is actually really the unique version and it hasn't been changed, which is so important, definitely with deepfakes. And so I think it's more like translating that, you know, those decentralized benefits through the solutions back to the end users. That's where really the value comes through, because decentralization in general doesn't really resonate, right? And crypto either. I mean, crypto is still like a bad word, unfortunately. We have a lot of work to do, but so we're definitely seeing more of these on-ramps and solutions being built right now that are helping there.
I completely agree. So, you know, one thing that I think we need to focus on as well is just dumbing down the terminology, like make it more layman's, so that it's kind of like a hidden tech.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to know that they're using blockchain, right? And I think that's a focus as well that we can do better at. I'm sure we're all working on that. So like just get more distributed, right? So as far as the consumers are concerned, and that's one of my major focuses, being Jamaican, right? And the emerging markets, it's like trying to get these emerging market people to just benefit from what's taking place, but letting them understand everyone like there has like one or two phones. How do you participate in this economy? You could connect to our network by just downloading the wallet, right? And using that wallet to connect to our client, and then you can start participating. But distributing that across the world, I think that is going to be a tough task, but a fun one, and can get us very far in this just changing the landscape of crypto.
Yeah.
And from a perspective of our data storage, because you're also touching on like training models are using how AI is actually producing so much more data. We also need to remember when we're talking about decentralized storage, it's not necessarily private. So a lot of data can also be opened. And if we're trying to prevent our deepfakes from happening, it also sometimes comes down to a lot of people discussing KYC, a lot of people discussing KYC that is connected that is on chain. That means like that your data is public and can be seen to other people. What do you think will be happening, and how we can measure like privacy levels, especially when it comes to companies? So how companies can measure the privacy level with our decentralized storage?
Yeah, I think in our scenario, it's really great because we have an open economy of entrepreneurs running data centers, around 3,300 of them, that can all build to their own model of security and encryption and whatever setting they want. I think a lot of what we've been trying to push, a number of what we call our storage providers, is really making sure that they're aware of what enterprises need for adoption, and then also what is needed for AI, for them to be able to take on a lot of different data sets from use cases of AI as well. But I think that I think it's great because a lot of people are also seeing the demand come through, and data is something that is pretty universal and used by everyone. And so I'm especially excited because I think there is an open marketplace of innovation that people can kind of design on their own. But the reality is enterprise is not sexy. There's a lot of, we were talking about this all yesterday, SOC 2 compliance, all these buzzwords that people create, and making sure that, today in Web3 and a lot of people that are builders, they have never worked in the enterprise. In fact, sometimes the ethos of a lot of hackers are the opposite of working suited up in an office, right? So it's also making sure that they get the requirements, they know how to build, and they know how to be enterprise ready. So
that is a good question. I mean, it's a very loaded question. So I'm going to try to zoom in on one thing, and that is this week we were at the decentralizedai.org event, which I think is the third time they organized it. So we have multiple parties coming together talking about how can we build an ecosystem where decentralized AI models can run without, intervention from governments and so on, and have that in an open marketplace where anyone can contribute. And data, of course, we talked about we talked about inferencing and training. So if you look at these AI workloads, what is very active, what decentralized compute stacks are used for today is primarily inferencing. Why? Because you can take an existing model, you can augment it with some data sets, you can do it locally now on your laptop because it's now feasible thanks to the improvements that have been made just in the last year. You can actually run these on your laptop with less than 8 gigabytes of RAM. So that's amazing. That means it can be running at the edge. But the inferencing itself happens on the decentralized compute stacks because there's not a lot of personal data being used yet to actually improve these models. It's more synthetic data sets that are being used to improve it. So the point was the training aspect where a lot of the private data comes in, right? Where you actually kind of train a model based on your personal private data sets, whether it's you on your laptop, right? Or it is an enterprise entity that has a lot of data sets. That is still not feasible for the reasons that Clara mentioned, that you're mentioning. One is sort of like the trust is not there and the technology is not there yet to transfer that data in a safe, transparent way across this decentralized network of providers that enterprises feel comfortable. So we talked about different solutions. There's one concept of smart agents that sort of are aggregators that sit on top of these decentralized compute and storage stacks and sort of already act in a way that they use smart contracts that were created by trusted parties so that users really can create these smart agents that have some level of trust. It's still a concept, and they're working on it. Morpheus is a team that's kind of working on that. They're also the organizers of the whole organization. And then there was the whole notion of KYC, which is then how do you actually access it? That is even harder than where does it happen in the stack? Is it with a wallet? Is it integrated with a traditional KYC system? So that there's a lot of integration points that were being discussed. Not a single solution, obviously, so still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
But what's interesting this time around is that we're actually sitting in a room and we're actually sitting with all the parties talking about it. And we're trying to draw out the data pipeline. So we did a whole workshop where we sat down and looked at the user stories of what does an AI ML engineer go through in this decentralized stack? What do they use? What tools are they using? What do they care about? Same thing with the users. And so there's a lot of good momentum going on right now, where last year that wasn't the case, right? So we just made a lot of progress. So I'm hoping that as we progress, that in next year we're hopefully going to get into the training, because that's where actually a lot of the large data sets would come in and the private data sets would come in. One technology that kept coming up was homomorphic encryption, right? Where the benefit there is that you can share your data in an encrypted format in such a way that another party, third party validator could just execute models or scripts on top of it without really seeing the data itself. So it all happened in an encrypted way. But that technology is not far enough yet to do all the Turing models and the traditional executions that we would expect to run the models that we want to run. So, but it's great. I think a lot of progress has been made just in the last year. The fact that you can already run some of these models on your own laptop on less than 8 gigabytes of RAM means you can already train, that model on your own data on your own PC. So that's already amazing, right? So at the edge, it can already happen. So it was a long answer. So
But that was perfect. A perfect segue into exactly what I was talking about as well, which I think if we can get like enterprise to participate in quests, right, where you get consumers to just do whatever quest the enterprise wants done and reward them, I think that could be a fun way to actually get this going as well.
I actually happened to do like data science, not like machine learning, AI, back in the days. And I remember the challenges working like with a lot of data sets, especially when it's on your laptop, when you cannot access it through a cloud. Of course, like you have to have like a way stronger, powerful computer in order to run these models.
Right.
But another thing that like I was touching on the privacy, a lot of big tech companies have access to enormous data. They can build a lot of prediction models right now with all this user data. Do you think we are very close to a moment when, let's say, like individual users who are utilizing decentralized storage can, for example, opt in to share their data for research, as you were explaining, Stefan, but without actually sharing the sensitive information? So as you were mentioning, the researcher will be able to access, let's say, financial data and build predictive models there with their permit of other individuals, but without accessing actual individual data sets.
Yeah.
How close we are to this being done.
I mean, there's some examples of DAOs, but and actually that was a hot topic as well. Like the data broker, who's going to be the broker between those that own the data and those that want to purchase the data, right? Yeah, and I mean, what you're seeing is you're seeing some marketplaces come to life. Like, I mean, the one that I can bring up is HiveMapper. I don't know if you know HiveMapper, but they sell dash cams, right? And if you're driving around with your car, you're an Uber driver, Lyft driver, you can like install this dash cam and get paid for capturing the streets, basically like helping map the streets as you're driving around, gets onboarded to their marketplace, and then they will help sell those data sets to those that are interested in purchasing these data sets. So again, perfect example of a working model where you connect the buyer with the actual provider that is generating and capturing these images. But what's interesting that we learned from that is that it's a very focused niche solution. Like you're very focused on a specific buyer and a specific creator. Now, if you generalize this, it's a lot harder. When you come in and you say, oh, I've got all these data sets on my laptop, how do you actually like find the right buyer for that? Which platforms? And I think what we're seeing is you're going to see more of these marketplaces come up. And, you know, HiveMapper is also a deep-in solution, right? Because it's a physical asset, in this case, a camera that is tokenized. And to the user, it's like, great, I'm paying off my dash cam. It's a great concept. And you could apply this to multiple. But the point is, like, it is still like hard to, as an end user, just like, oh, I've got these amazing data sets that I created. Like, how do I actually find the right marketplace and sell that? And then the second part to that is, how do I do it in a safe way so that people don't just copy my data sets? And so, yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done there. Yeah, I'm not as, I don't have any other examples, but I mean, I know there's a lot of data DAOs being built right now. And I think we're going to see more of that.
Have you been hearing or following the collateralization of data by banks?
Not yet. No.
Yes.
I have been looking at that so far.
It
Yeah.
is very interesting.
Yeah.
I was talking to our founder about that a couple of months ago, and apparently that is happening at the moment. But I just don't understand how they're going to be able to
quantify it, or like,
quantify it, and how do you make sure it's not resold? Right?
Yeah.
If you collateralized it, you have it.
Yeah.
You've given a loan on it, but what if I want to take that same data set to another bank and get another loan?
Yeah. Someone has to assess it. And to me, that can only happen in an open market where you can actually see how many people are willing to buy it. And then you have to find a marketplace I mean, I'm not thinking about it. It's a difficult problem, but at the same time, it's a huge opportunity, because I think there's going to be so many marketplaces that will focus on very specific data sets.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually one of the biggest fears. We were just at Davos last month, or I guess 2 months ago, with a lot of policymakers having fears around AI, because in the Web2 world, a lot of large major companies, in fact, own most of the world's data, right? And so when we think about separation of that and having data integrity, I think there's a lot of consumers today that feel a lot better thinking about their data not necessarily being mined or owned by large corporations. I didn't want to say that side because that is, something that a lot of consumers say are frustrated by or feeling like they're being tracked by every site they use.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. But also, I see it's the biggest challenge. A lot of people don't really realize what's happening with their data. So there's definitely like a big friction from adoption perspective. So my other question also, what do you think is the biggest challenge right now? Is it like consumers not understanding the value? Is it like enterprise is really worried to actually decentralize their data sets and like kind of losing control? Is it like a government and regulations because they also losing control of data? What do you think is the biggest friction for us to move towards our decentralized storage?
Siobhan and I have talked about this for a while, but even with AWS and all the features, it took more than a decade, in fact, over 15 years for even centralized cloud to get to the point of where it is today. And I think there's still a lot of layers on top of decentralized storage that are still being built by companies to get to the same place where centralized cloud is. And so I think that is the biggest challenge is usability, being able to have a network of, other companies building on top of that. That just takes time. I think a lot of people are excited by it because it's new and interesting. And it's also really, really important to make sure that we think about new ways of storage today. But I was also, more and more parts of the world today are actually being connected with just basic internet. So there's areas of the world where they're just starting their own, they're just starting to touch data in a new way. So with Starlink and other people providing connectivity. So
yeah, and I would say like it's trust, right? Is the biggest challenge is that they're not trusting an arbitrary number of providers that are, contributing to storing or processing models on their data. And so they're used to dealing with one entity, right? They would close a contract with like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and it's one entity. They know what to
poor hotline.
They know who to sue when something goes wrong. Yeah. There's an SLA, there's a contract, there's lawyers on each side, and now it becomes really hard because like who is actually like going to store my data? What are the marketplaces that I can choose from? What are the SLAs? And so because we're now like giving them so many options and there's so many on-ramps, it is a little chaotic for them, right? For the enterprise. And so I think what is going to happen is like, I go back to how Amazon got a lot of traction too, is like you got these IT personnel that had a company credit card. They had a limit of $50 or even like $500 a month. It's just enough to like store a little bit in Amazon, play around in Amazon. And before you knew it, that started to build up, and all of a sudden, CIOs and CIOs were realizing, wow, 20% of my data is in the cloud because I have 15 IT administrators, or even within the development teams, right? They had like a certain budget that was just, under the radar, and data was like stored in the cloud. I think here it's going to be very similar, where you're going to have these emerging developers that want to play around, are comfortable with their proof of concepts to run on decentralized. But that's what we're seeing on decentralized computing. It's going to be the same in storage. And before you know it, you're going to see like more adoption. It's going to be integrated in their production environments. And then enterprises will have to come to terms. Now, of course, there are other more focused on-ramps that sort of obfuscate the decentralized nature behind it, like I mentioned, right? Where they go in a more centralized approach. They have a sales force. They reach out to the enterprises. They onboard their data, but it goes through sort of an on-ramp or an abstraction layer with like a look and feel of Web 2. And so it's like it's an S3 interface, looks and feels, smells like an S3, great. But under the hood, there's a full decentralized architecture that reduces the cost that they pass on to their end user. And for the end user, for the enterprise, it's more acceptable because they're dealing with one entity. So there's this phased approach of eventual decentralization that happens at different levels. And we're seeing these on-ramps taking sort of like the first step in like bringing at least a backend infrastructure, a decentralized backend infrastructure to offset their costs and reduce also the capital that they need to raise as a startup to get started. Because one of the biggest advantages by using decentralized infrastructure now is that you don't have to go raise 100 million or $1 billion even, right? If you want to compete with compute, you can, kind of leverage these decentralized stacks and really focus on providing value to a specific use case as an end user and an end user vertical, basically. And, it makes it a lot easier for you to kind of scale your architecture faster.
That's a really good point when you're talking about startups. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm a very big opponent of for decentralization. I want us to move towards decentralization. But at the same time, like when I was building a Web3 project, it was very complicated to move even our masternode to decentralized storage providers because there was not enough ecosystem. UX is way harder. Totally. And when you're like in a very short timeline, you need like to build a whole platform like within the months. As like,
you don't want anything to go wrong.
Yeah, you don't want anything to go wrong. So you're trusting centralized providers and you're thinking, okay, we're going to figure out the centralized part later. But there's no later because you start growing and there will be only more and more things happening. So I don't know. Like,
and then the egress fees become so high that you can never move out of it.
AWS just got you.
Yeah.
It's true.
So how can we change that? How can we change because it's not only about education, it's like, as you were mentioning about trust. So how can we start changing trust? Should we go like organize like hacker houses, show people like what can be this entry point?
Oof, that's a very good question. I think it's really going to boil down to just letting them understand on like a more practical scale, right? Like what exactly is data? Every time I interact with technology, I'm creating new data. A lot of people don't understand that. So where does the data go, right? What's happening on the back end? The black box that, your data is being used to train these AIs on are just really incredible. And the money that's behind it as well. So I would definitely, I think I'm becoming more into looking at the foundation, which is always going to be the consumer, right? Starting with them. And the consumer typically becomes your entrepreneur, your startup, right? Your builder. But essentially, if we can get the education done properly in a practical level, I think that's going to really help the future of the data economy. One thing that I'm concerned about as well is now the Internet of Bodies, right? And what that means for data and where that's going to be stored. And I'm hoping that we can solve this decentralized storage challenge very quickly, right? For what's coming down the pike.
Especially with AI, like I know there are a lot of conversations pretty much every time like we're discussing about AIs, there's like a question like, will AI like conquer the world and like heal us all? So with access to decentralized storage, like AI, the like data that we accumulate are going to be growing at an extreme speed every single day. So I can't honestly even imagine like where we're going to be like next month, in a year, in 2 years. What do you think it means for like AI being connected to decentralized storage? What are the potential dangers for us as a human beings, for companies, for the world? Are we going to survive?
Wow. I didn't expect that question.
Well, yeah, I think there's more risk with AI connected to centralized storage than decentralized storage. I mean, by far, because I think we've all talked about content integrity, deepfakes, all these issues where, you can actually solve a lot of these challenges easier using blockchain, using decentralized storage to be able to trace where the data is stored and how it's manipulated over time. But I think the AI challenge is there's a lot of positive parts of it, and there's also a lot of things that are unknown or scary to a lot of people.
Right. Yeah, and there was a comment made yesterday I liked, is that the only currency that AI can talk or use is crypto. It doesn't speak fiat. It can't interact with fiat because it's not a digital way of interacting. It doesn't because there's too many central entities involved that would control it, and And I think I agree with Clara saying, like the intersection of blockchain and AI is really, it is super crucial. It's there to like have a full chain of custody, like, you know, proof of like every step along the way, how data was created to transformed to, like, to your point earlier. So that was a lot of the conversations as well, as like, how do you ensure that data portability across all these different steps along the way get maintained and it's completely verifiable, because we cannot rely on the central entities that control or manage, even if it's one part of it, right? Even if it's one step. We've seen multiple examples of that. And so I think it's only a good thing. And I believe that it will help us to get to a better outcome than the architectures that we have today. So I'm very positive about it. I'm very excited about it. So
wow. Yeah. Decentralizing AI, that's the way to go. I'm like really excited about the future. And at the same time, it keeps me up at night, right? Yeah. So who's going to really lead this? Is this going to be the centralized institutions or back in the hands of the people, which, you know, I've been a very big proponent of the people. Yeah, I am definitely looking forward to what's going to happen down the pike, but a bit concerned at the same time, right? And imagine now AI can pay each other with digital currencies. What does that even mean, looking down the pike? If they become sentient, if that's even possible.
My like big concern on that side is so when it comes to decentralization, it comes down to like our personal responsibility. So you're responsible for protecting your own data, covering your digital traces, and protecting not only your financial data but any personal information. So with our like, if we're imagining like decentralized data sets that it's easy to access for even individuals, and now we have AIs that can help you to build our new models. Can get access to more information that you cannot build because, for example, you are not a developer, but you can now train AI model to get access to this data that you're looking for of individuals that are not maybe understanding well how to protect their data. Maybe they didn't care enough for like whatever reason. Do you think it also opens a lot more rooms for potential scams and fraudulent activities by other people? Especially, you know, we're in the Web3 space. We're facing with so many impersonations, scams. Do you think decentralized storage can actually open more room for these activities to happen?
I think it actually, I mean, I don't agree. I think, in fact, it helps solve a lot of the fears. We have a project that we help fund called Starling Lab. And, you know, they used our technology to specifically be able to trace photos from what's happening on the ground in Ukraine to be one day admissible in international criminal court, because a lot of news agencies or people might just put out photos from 20 years ago and say this is what's happening on the ground. And going back to the content integrity layer, being able to prove where something came from, it's going to be how we trust the internet in this day and age. AI will come with centralized storage, it will come with decentralized storage, but blockchain really enables us to trust and verify where something is coming from. And I think, you know, I think like the world is a better place with AI when we can verify what is real, what isn't. I also do want to say it is also not great to over fear things like automation and AI. I was in U.S. government several years ago during the 2016 election timeframe, and a lot of people were so scared of deepfakes at that time. It was huge on the news, and it actually led people to not want to go out and vote because they were so scared of not realizing what is true and what isn't. And I think one of the things we tried to do was not let the fears of technology overshadow just going out and making a decision. So when people overfear, I fear that a lot of people might be scared to even, you know, use the internet as much or do certain things. So
going into the woods.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you think, actually, that's a very interesting point, like on deepfakes and AI. We also had like a conversation recently about if we're stepping into a point when humans cannot really distinguish information, whether it's a deepfake. Deepfakes are now so realistic. It's crazy. With a new update, I forgot the name of this new chat GPT, like OpenAI update on the video side, which is like completely crazy. Like you cannot tell if this video is real or not. And human eye can no longer distinguish it. So do you think we're stepping in the era when the only way to validate information is AI?
I think, like we had a conversation this week as well, is like there's going to be a moment where one of the examples was like today there's even cases where people get calls with an AI rendered voice of their friend or lover and telling them they need their help and transfer funds. And it's so real. So these scams are getting so good that the only future that we can step into is we have to use cryptographic hashes and verify through cryptography that this is truly coming from the source, like your friend or, and it's kind of validates, just like we use cryptographic hashes on Signal and other, communication channels. But the point is it's going to have to be embedded in our daily routines and the way we communicate, interact at a much higher level, because scams used to be more for 60-year-olds and older, right? Now it's sort of like coming down, like you said, it's becoming really hard to see with a human's eye or with a hearing, listening to the sound. But I think, naturally it's going to drive us towards a more encrypted world, and like what Clara was saying, on-chain world where everything is verifiable, even a simple phone call.
Completely agree. I actually read a couple of days ago about a C-suite that at a bank was scammed with AI, right? Managed to lose $150 million. And what was really interesting about it, he joined a Zoom call with people that look like his partners. It was really partners. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. But anyways, I completely agree. This is moving us more to on-chain verifiability. Provenance, that's going to be huge. And I agree with Clara as well, right? When I shared earlier, that keeps me up at night. It's like, it's a fun experience, like trying to figure out partnerships and building this ecosystem, because we're really building the future of humanity, right? And I think it's a large lift, but a fun one at the same time. Here we are having this discussion, right?
Yeah.
No, it's really, really crazy. I didn't know about that example.
I'll share.
Oh my God. I think something similar was happening with their Ethereum Foundation recently as well, because they were also pushing for more updates on AI verification, because I think there was, I wouldn't remember, but it will find, well, definitely.
That's insane.
No, they did a Zoom call.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Before, I remember actually Miko Matsumura was mentioning on our podcast, before AI, someone hired an actor to impersonate Justin Sun, and we're pitching him startup idea. So before, people had to take so many extra steps. Now everyone can do it.
Yeah.
Everyone can do a Zoom call, have a AI actor impersonating someone famous. No, that's completely crazy. And I think on that side, also from a verification perspective, we had multiple conversations. We were touching on it with Ilya Polosukhin from Mir, who is also a big proponent of AI in the blockchain. We were discussing the human verification and KYC on the blockchain. I personally, I'm not supporting that, because it opens a lot of room for scams, for big data transparency that I don't believe in when it comes to, of course, the personal data. How do you think we can verify these interactions? How someone can know that it's actually me and not AI models that impersonates me based on all my data, maybe even got access to my ID and did a KYC verification online. How do you think we can actually verify that someone is human through their data without actually exposing anything very sensitive digitally?
Yeah, I mean, that was actually one of the key conversations this week too, is the concept of smart agents came into play there, or the discussion of that. But it requires end-to-end, full transparency. I'm not saying you need to expose your data, but just all of the steps, like, this person, this wallet, it was more like on a wallet level. And, the KYC was more, face to face, basically. Like, okay, you and I are connecting through this app, whether it's Signal or not, show me your cryptographic hash. And if that cryptographic hash continues through all the communication channels that we are participating with, then that's the only safest way right now to actually like guarantee that is happening. So it will require full integration in all these application stacks that we use today, just like Zoom, right? I mean, we're kind of trusting this central entity, like this Zoom service that we're all paying for, but like to your point, right? At what point is that going to go away? And how are we interacting with these services? I would like to see, I have a wallet. I connect with you. You and I build a trusted key. And so then we can go to another service and interact directly through that service, through our own communication channels and our own wallets. But I think that's where we're going to have to get to. It's like driving all these integrations.
What are your thoughts on like ZK proofs?
Yeah, it's super helpful. And I think
Filecoin is actually the largest ZK proof network out there.
Yeah.
We use, So I to go back to the earlier point, there's a lot actually you can still do with traditional security measures like biometrics, like the Zoom example. If you force your fingerprint to join the Zoom call, there's small things you can do or answering security questions. But definitely it is scary to think about it and think about the world that people live in. I actually also think that today, the younger generation, like grew up with the computer or mobile device in their hands, they're actually really, really good at verification. They grew up with Finstas, fake Instagrams, like they know how to protect themselves. But I think the thing is also like we have to demand as a society that we want the standards out there. So like one thing that you guys may have been seeing is today journalism is dying as a practice because it's easier to create fake news or for people to just create articles than it is to verify what is the truth out there, right? And it's the same thing that's happening in the online space. Like we have to have people that really want to put in the right work and demand a practice that allows for the right actors to be the ones that come out on top.
Yeah, and I heard like ideas of actually like verifying everything that you were saying. So for example, if Clara, you mentioned something publicly, it's actually like an actual transaction on chain that you can verify. So if other media outlet is referring to you, it's actually referring to a specific hash that everyone else can verify. But to the point of like verifying this information, I don't believe that most of people are gonna do it.
Yeah. Right.
Like I see it right now. Like I'm being impersonated all the time on Instagram, on Telegram, just because of our events. I have a fake account created on a daily basis.
No way.
And my friends are still texting me, is it you? Is it you? I'm saying like the easy way to look if it's a fake account, just go like in the photos with me, like if it's Instagram, or like look at our conversation on Telegram. If we have a previous conversations, and of course like that's me, like you can see it. If there is a new account asking you like for money, and they're actually doing a great job. They're doing research on me, so they know about my companies, about things that I'm working on. Yeah, they actually like got money from one of my friends, which is crazy. And I understand that those people are really smart. They can verify, but sometimes they're really busy. They just they don't pay too much attention. So I'm not sure how we actually going to get to that point. Do we have to have like a special AI agent that would just say like, hey, can you tell me like if it's true or not? Like what do you see like going to be a next step to simplify this process? Because majority of people like not going to verify, so not going to click like check the hash transaction if it's real or not. They're just going to go with it.
Is that where we get into soul-bound tokens?
Yeah. Wow.
Right? You got your entire life now.
Your whole soul.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost have to, right? Everything, like you said, that you create digitally and also physically, like how you just speaking in this microphone, for example, right? I mean, you can go that far. How do you integrate there? But you're right. I think maybe AI, these smart agents, or these AI agents that you're referring to that are optimized to identify that, this was indeed Clara, or this was signed by Clara's wallet, right, through this application. Imagine you logging into Zoom and all the communication that goes through Zoom is encrypted automatically with Clara's wallet, then, and there's an on-chain proof that this was signed by Clara, then you can at least point to that on-chain proof that, okay, this was Clara, because look at the smart contract, that's her. I'm actually even seeing, which is fascinating, I forgot the name of the company now. This is a startup that actually, they used to work on the Human Genome Project, I believe, and they are starting to create fabrics with an imprinted address on-chain. So basically, like, you imagine Louis Vuitton, right? There's all these fake Louis Vuitton bags, and imagine you can build or you can manufacture a Louis Vuitton eventually. I'm not saying Louis Vuitton is doing that, but I mean, as an example, and you can actually create molecules and the fabric in a way that when you take a sample of that and you check the sequence of these molecules, you can verify that it is pointing back to an address on Solana. And so I think this whole concept is like talking about how far we should take it. This is a perfect example of how far we should take it, actually, to like, this is a different use case, but I think that's where we're heading towards.
I think one of the challenges as well, right? If we're going to use our wallets as verification, what if you go to a phishing site, hacked? Now someone's verifying themselves as you, right? To access Zoom and continuing that scam.
Yeah, they catch your seed phrase, seed passphrase.
I mean, which goes back to the basics. I feel like is people need to just have
lots of education,
a good sense of their own cybersecurity hygiene online, and just spatial awareness, like where they're going, how they're entering their data, protecting sensitive information. These basic things are not hard, but most of the time, cybersecurity attacks happen because of phishing scams that are really, really low-hanging fruit,
right? That
people don't realize, or it can be the weakest chain of command in an organization that doesn't realize, and they become the target. So I just think overall, like anything, cybersecurity hygiene is so important to protect you and your friends from having their information out there.
It all comes down to like personal responsibility.
Yeah,
exactly. So I totally agree. And like now I'm imagining the world like where before every single transaction or before any like human interaction, we're just going to have like an AI agent saying like, okay, this is Clara, this is Stefan, this is Mike. Okay, you are good to communicate with them. They're real.
Yeah,
it's really true that it's going to be a combination.
Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
It's like if they're watching, like here's the idea for a new Black Mirror.
Yeah, but we usually approve encouraged transactions. It's biometric, so they look at location. You have to say a couple of phrases. And I actually have a twin sister, so I thought about identity my whole life. And so I'm always like, if I try having my twin sister in the camera saying these words, will they know?
Have you tried it?
Did you try?
I have not, but then I did ask the scenario to that team, and I think a lot of companies face this, and they're like, I don't know if we have a good solution.
Good test.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you Clara?
I might not be.
No.
I don't know.
Wow. Now we have definitely to create a new AI model just to verify you.
I think he just needs to see me work out at the gym.
Right.
Snowboard.
Snowboarding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like, okay. Yeah, we know how to verify, right?
You can verify.
Give her a snowboard and see how well she's doing. That's funny.
No, just start wrapping up the session. I think like we touched like so many like crazy conversations, and I would love to continue this like for like hours, probably, because it's a really, really hot topic. But I want to know from you, just to wrap up, what do you think should change? Like, what is the one thing that should change for us immediately to increase adoption?
I mean, regulation. I know it's a big word. I think just more support from the government and like being able to innovate, because we spend a lot of time in like trying to cover ourselves and just in general. I'm talking about all the developers I talk to, startups I talk to. They're struggling with like how much of my time should go towards, hiring a legal person versus actually building, and that's super disappointing. And the way that this innovation is going at this speed is the fastest I've ever seen. And so I think that's the number one. And it's, of course, we can do a whole session separately about that. I'm also not the specialist there, but I think that's just the biggest bottleneck in my opinion.
No, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think talent. I think the biggest bottleneck is definitely, if you can you think about like Bletchley Park, all these amazing innovations we have in history. We have to bring the smartest people to care and understand what we do. I still feel like a lot of people don't understand blockchain or Web3 that are so smart and would kill it in building companies or startups in the space. And so I think talent is definitely a bottleneck that we can continue to grow. We saw a rise in talent in 2022, but I think there's more and more people that are more excited. And it's great to even see the talent this week here at Eat Denver come together.
Yeah, I completely agree with both what you've said. Education, always key. Personal responsibility, key. We're so distributed, right? And I'm trying to figure out ways to like bring everyone together so we can all connect and like really whack and build out, right? And I'm seeing that is, even though we attend these conferences, there's just so much that's going on that it's very hard for you to like keep up or also just make the right contact. And if you do make that right contact, follow through. So yeah, I think if we can figure out more ways of a collaborative essence and scale that out on a macro scale, I think that's going to be very inviting for crypto.
It's definitely organized chaos.
Yeah,
It's fun, but it's chaos. Yeah.
I've always been. Thank you so much for joining. And by the way, this is not beer.
Yeah.
If anyone is watching while drinking beer, it's water.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining today and discussing the future of decentralized storage. We did a lot of progress, and I hope we actually are going to be increasing adoption starting this week, because that's the place to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah.